Okay, this is what we're creating today. An Egyptian tomb, very dark tomb with a nice rising sun coming out. These are the assets we will be using, and you can find these either on Moodle or in Student Share somewhere. I'm going to use those to create this. Now, I got this tutorial from PSD Toots Plus, and there's Photoshop tutorials on this website, but you can also go to other versions of Toots Plus for different tutorials, not just Photoshop. And to download the assets from here, if you need assets for a Photoshop, just come and see me. I can get it for you. Okay, well, let's start. Let's go File, New in Photoshop. There are different presets. You can choose Custom there. Now we want the width to be 700. Make the height 800, and the resolution, which is the quality, make that 300. Make sure color mode is on RGB color. You don't want it a black and white image, and leave everything else default. That's fine. We'll give it a name. We'll call it the Egyptian tomb, and when you're ready, just hit OK. You can use Control plus and Control minus on your keyboard to zoom in and zoom out. If you make a mistake, use Control Alt and Z to go back. Let's go File, Place, and let's place our first image in, and that's going to be the wall. You can find this these pictures in Student Share. Now first you'll see there's an X on it. That means that you can transform. We don't want to transform, but I'm going to just show you. You can transform it. You can make it bigger and smaller. If you're happy with where it is, and you should be, just hit Enter on your keyboard, and that saves the image. If you have a look, the image has this little indicator on it. That indicator just means that it's locked. I can't use any of the tools on the image and delete it. What we need to do is right-click the image, scroll down to Rasterize Layer. This will unlock the layer, create a bitmap image that we can actually edit. Our wall image is on top of the background image. I can use the eye to turn things on and off. The first tool there is the moving tool. I'm just showing you that right now. What we're going to do is just adjust this image. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Desaturation. Just get rid of all that color. Next thing is Image Adjustments, and we want to make the contrast and brightness a bit better, but I'm just going to go into levels and do this. It's a bit easier. And we're just going to pull that up, make it darker. It is going to be a dark tomb, so that'll do there. You can fiddle around with it a little bit more if you want to bring out those lines from the bricks. Yeah, that'll do. Now what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate our wall layer. So right click the layer, hit duplicate. I want you to save this layer as the roof and hit OK. Grab the moving tool and move the roof. Okay, moving tool is the first tool there. Grab that tool and make sure you're on roof and just move that layer. You'll see we've got two now. Now just a reminder, you cannot go and think you can click on a different layer and move it. You need to actually select that layer before you can move it around. So make sure you got roof selected and then move it up high. Now this is going to be really cool. What we're going to do is change the perspective of that image. Let's zoom out for a second using Control minus on your keyboard. Now to transform an image, use the commands Control T. If you're using a Mac, it's Command T, and you'll see the handlebars have come up, and we can adjust how the picture looks. Now before we do anything, what we want to do is right click the image after hitting Control T, right click the image, and you'll see some options there. Now some of these options are distort and perspective. We're going to use perspective right now. and I want you to drag the top right handlebar all the way to the right. Keep going, and you'll see this image is going to start to fall into place. It's going to become a roof for us. I'm going to zoom out, Control minus, so we can get some more width there. And it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to move that up about there. Can always move it later. Yeah, that'll do for now. And I'm going to hit enter to save that perspective. If I didn't like it, I could hit escape and it'll go back to the original image, but hit enter and that'll save it. Next, we're going to place a new image in. That image is going to be the sand. Okay, what we're going to do with the sand is change the color a little bit. Well, first we need to rasterize it, right? It's locked there. Let's right click that layer, scroll down and hit rasterize layer. We're going to go to image, hue and saturation. Now, hue, you can change the color of an image. We don't want to actually do that. We want to keep the color basically the same, but we want to tone down the color and make it a little bit darker. So bring saturation and lightness down and leave the hue where it is. Just make it a little bit darker, almost as if the sand is in a darker room, that's all. After you've done that, hit enter to save it. What we're going to do, we're going to grab the moving tool, just drag it down a little bit. Next thing, let's hit Control T to get the transform up, and right click and use perspective. What you want to do is hit enter, grab your layer and drag it underneath the walls. That way it'll actually sit behind the wall will be on top. And then just drag your layer down using the moving tool. You might want to resize it if it doesn't look that good. I'm just going to resize and reposition it. And that looks better there. Okay, you decide how you want yours to look, but make sure you drag your floor layer, the sand, beneath the wall and the roof layer. Okay, next tool, the second tool is the marquee tool, selection tool. You can select things, delete them, manipulate them. What we're going to do is make sure we're on the wall layer, and we're going to select somewhere in the middle, and we're going to create a little gap in our wall. So I'm going to just about that high, almost up to the second brick, and about that wide, right in the middle. And I'm going to let go around here. It doesn't really matter because we can always go back and delete it again, but make sure the wall is selected and then hit delete on your keyboard. That will create a little gap, and I'm going to show you what this gap is for in a little bit. Okay, next we duplicate the layer. Let's call this left wall. And what we're going to do with the left wall, we're going to move it, get the moving tool, the first tool, move it away, make sure you can see it. We're going to use the transform tool and using not perspective but distort this time to actually create an inner wall. Actually, before we do that, just match it up. Make sure the lines are perfect and then do right click, select distort, and then you're just going to drag those handlebars in and just do it just like I have now, and you'll see what we're going to create in a second. Just drag it in a little bit more. Okay, make sure those lines match up on the left hand side, and that's okay for now. What we're going to do, we're going to duplicate that wall. So let's right click left wall, duplicate layer. We're going to call this right wall, and let's get the moving tool, and let's just move right wall, and we're just going to flip it. To do that, just use Control T, right click, and then say flip horizontally. And there we go, we have a right wall, and we can just reposition that, make sure the lines line up, and can you hit enter to save it, and then use the arrow keys to be precise where you're going to position that wall. Okay, now we have some walls that are going inwards. We're getting more of a 3D look to our tomb. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to open up this middle area. We're going to put some stairs, and we're also going to put an opening of a nice sky there. Let's go to File, Place. Let's place the next image, which is the sunrise with some nice mountains. Oh, if your image goes behind another image like this, just hit enter and then move it up. Okay, so if it must be sitting, make it above all the layers except the roof layer. That'll work well. Okay, in this situation, what you could do is use the eraser tool. We're going to just rasterize this layer real quickly. You could use the eraser tool, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use a clipping mask, as demonstrated here. A clipping mask will cover an image up, unlike an eraser that actually erases the image permanently. The mask just hides it, and you can always bring that image back, whereas the eraser will always erase it and it will be gone forever. So this time around we're going to use a clipping mask. I'm going to get a brush, and just as a demonstration I'll just show you. I'm just going to quickly go and get a black brush, and I'll show you. If I get the black brush and I paint over it, the image goes away. If I get a white brush and paint over it, the image comes back. Okay, so that's what a mask does. Now I can right click and adjust the size of my brush. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Also the hardness, I'll show you what hardness does, just in case you don't know. Hardness at 100% looks like that. Hardness at almost 0% looks like that. So it's a bit softer edges. Okay, I'm going to use Control-Alt-Z to get rid of those two. Control-Alt-Z just takes you back if you make a mistake. I'm using a black brush, and I'm just going to mask out the surrounding areas of this image. Get rid of the mountain, get rid of most of the sky. Now what this is going to look like, and you'll see it eventually, is going to be the opening of our tomb. So we want it to look sort of like this. If you've deleted too much, remember, just get the white paintbrush out and you can paint it back in. Make sure the brush is soft. If you have a hard brush, and you'll see the outline far too strongly. It's very bold there. So just soften it up a little bit and just play around with those. Try and get yours to look similar to that. You want the good colors from the sky coming through. That's going to look really good. Okay, let's go File, Place, and the next one we're going to place is the concrete. Now just hit enter on this as it is. We're going to use the marquee tool to just cut out a small section here. So just select a nice rectangular shape and say layer via copy, and then we can actually delete the original concrete layer, and I'll rename that layer. I'll just double click in layer 1 and rename it Something like stairs, or yeah, stairs will do for now. Let's get the moving tool and move it into place. These are going to be our steps, and we're going to need around 8 or 9 of them from memory. Let's zoom into this area. Just use Control Plus on your keyboard, and we're going to place it just here. Stretch it out. Actually, it's probably not where we want it to be. Let me just resize it first. We actually want it to be further in. So let's do that. So that's our first step. Maybe make it a little bit thinner there. That looks good. That's our first step. Don't worry about the color for now. We'll fix the colors up later. Now what we're going to do is duplicate our layer, and we're going to create multiple steps leading up. So right click your layer, hit duplicate layer, and just hit OK. You don't have to change the name. Get the moving tool and move that up. Let's zoom in so we can see. What you want to do after you move it up, just slightly above the first one, you want to resize it. So hit Control T again, resize it, make it a little bit smaller, not too thin, and then duplicate again. A shortcut to duplicate a layer is Control J on your keyboard. If you need a shortcut for that, instead of right clicking the layer, you can use Control J. That's what I'm doing. And just continue to resize them. Each step should get a little bit smaller. Control J again. You can see we're getting a few layers right now, but we will collapse them down. We can always create a group for them, but later on we're going to merge these. We're almost at the sunrise, so let's just keep going here. And one more will do, I think. Let's just get... Make sure your steps lead all the way to the top of the tomb there. Excellent. Now my stairs are a little bit crooked, or some of them are a bit out of place. So what I can do, instead of looking at which layer it is and then selecting that layer on the side, I can use Control on the keyboard and then click on the image, and that will actually select the layer. And then I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move them around, or I can use the mouse to actually move them around. I'm just straightening them up a little bit. Now those last ones, I'm going to select them all and move them together. And that looks pretty straight. That looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is actually merge these layers together. I'm going to select the first one, hold shift down and select the last one. It selects all layers. Right click and hit merge layers, and then I'll rename this stairs. Now I've got one layer, that's my entire staircase. I'm going to go to image adjustments, levels, and I'm just going to darken my stairs to match the tomb. Pull that up a little bit. Looks pretty good. Okay, one problem with my stairs is the gap in between each step there. So to fix that up, what we're going to do is add a shadow, and that way it'll correct that. So we're going to create a new layer, a blank layer, and I'm just going to click on the stairs, and then I'm going to click on the new layer button, which is down the bottom near the trash can. Now I'm going to rename this and call it something like shadows or stair shadows, and I'm going to move that underneath my stairs. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the paintbrush. I'm going to select a black color for my paintbrush by double clicking and selecting black, and then I'm going to use a big brush, not too big, and a little soft. And I'm just going to paint, make it a bit softer actually. There we go. And paint that surrounding area there, like so. That's it. And now what I'm going to do is actually, after I've done this, I'm going to get the eraser. And the eraser tool is really, really cool when you can do things like this. I'm still in my stair shadow. I'm dropping the hardness down of my eraser and make it about that big. And what I'm going to do, I'll zoom in so you can see, but I'm not actually touching the shadow itself. I'm just on the outside and I'm clicking, just on the outside and clicking away, and it's feathering and it's making the shadow a little bit lighter, a little bit more realistic, not as bold on the edges there. So don't go completely over your shadow, just go next to it and click away and you will see. Perfect. Now it's only erasing the shadows because that's the layer we are on. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. We can move on from here. I'm going to have a new layer. Let's grab this layer and let's put it above the staircase. Name it Stairs Sand. Now go for a white color, maybe a little off-white, but white will do. You can select different colors there. We want kind of a sandy white. We want it to kind of glow, so the white, just off-white is good. Make it really small and bring the hardness down a little bit as well. And let's just zoom in here. What we're going to do is on top of each staircase, we're going to just pile on some sand here. It's going to be like sand from outside of the tomb has come inside and just there's still some on top. I've just adjusted the size and hardness of the brush there. You decide how hard and how big you want the size of the brush to be when you're doing this. Just skipping ahead here, having a look. What you might want to do from time to time is just zoom out, see how it looks. And if you see it doesn't look that great, just zoom back in and fix it up. So I may need to just fix up these areas here. If you think the color is too strong, you can always go up top to opacity, on top of Photoshop, opacity, and turn the opacity down. What it will do is make the color a little bit more transparent. But so far that looks pretty good. You can also drop the opacity down on the whole layer. And I'm just going to get a really white strip and just go over it with that. Okay, I'm happy with it now. That looks pretty good. The layer itself, I'm going to drop the opacity down just slightly, not too much, maybe you decide, between 50 and about 90%. It depends on your taste, but 70-80% is usually good. I'm just having a look at it now. Okay, we're going to grab a new layer and we're going to drag it all the way down beneath our wall. I'm going to call this Sand Light. Now basically we're going to grab a white color and we're going to grab the brush, make it a little bit bigger and not too hard. That'll do there. increase the size, maybe a little bit bigger. And what we're going to do is we are going to create some light spots on the ground because the light is going to be, I'll go up top to opacity and bring that down as well because it'll be too dark. So drop that down 20-30%, something like that will do. And that looks alright. Might make it softer actually and a bit bigger. Okay, and just put some spots of light there. Now this will blend in later on, so don't worry too much if it comes out too strong. You can make some different sizes if you like. Also, you could decide to drop the opacity on the whole layer if you like, if it's too strong. Next, we're going to go File, Place, and we're going to place in the statues. Don't move them, just hit Enter to save them, and right-click and rasterize our statue. Now, there's a couple of ways you can get rid of the background of the statue. You can use the eraser and just start erasing it. Most people will do that because they think it's probably the easiest way, and you can do that. Make sure the eraser is on hard. Or you can use the pen tool, and I'm going to demonstrate what the pen tool can do. The pen tool can make selections and things like that. Make sure path is selected up top in your pen tool. You don't want a shape being created. Now the pen tool is just a series of clicks and it creates straight lines. So we click once, we move ahead, click again, and click, 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 and we can create a selection. Now to go around a curve, you click and drag, and that will create a curve. Click and drag will create a curve. Now if you stuff up, if it doesn't look that great and it's all wonky, that's fine. Just keep going around, you can fix it up later. So this one here, what you can do is get a tool. It's called the Direct Selection tool. It's underneath the pen tool, underneath the T-bar, the text tool, and you can use the Direct Selection tool to fix up those errors that come from the pen tool. Now we're going to grab the pen tool back, and we're going to continue. There it is, and we'll just continue across. So if you mess it up, just grab the Direct Selection tool and you can fix your curves up. If you're not too confident with the pen tool, use the eraser, but the pen tool is a fantastic tool when you get used to it. It makes life a lot easier to get rid of backgrounds like this. Now to finish it off, we just click on the first point that we had created initially, and it joins the selection together. Now to actually make the selection, we right click and click on Make Selection. We leave the default settings and hit OK. And we've got a selection there. To actually get the statue out of this picture, we're going to use the Marquee tool, Selection tool. Right click inside our selection and say Layer via Copy. That will create a statue on a new layer, and then we can delete the original image, and all we'll be left with is our statue. Now what we can do is name this left statue, and let's duplicate it, and we need a right statue as well, so call it statue right, and just move them over, and we need to resize them. A bit too big at the moment. When you're resizing, keep the ratio. To keep the ratio perfect, while you're resizing, hold the Shift key down, and it will keep the ratio between the height and the width the same. And that looks pretty good there. Let's also resize the right one, holding Shift down and resizing. And I'm just going to line them up, see if they're the same size. That'll do. Hit Enter to save and move it over. Good. That looks pretty good there. Okay, we've got most of our assets in place. I'm just going to make an adjustment on the statue. I'm just going to make an adjustment on the statue. We're going to go to hue and saturation, turn the hue down, and just turn the lightness down a bit. Now for the other statue, I don't want the hue and saturation, the saturation down as much. We want a bit of color in this one, but not as much as the other one. So let them be a little bit different, so they're not identical. Okay, we're going to create a new layer, and this is for the shadows. Now I'm going to create a layer called statue shadows. I'm going to grab the brush tool, make it a bit big, very soft. It's going to be black. It's opacity up top, make sure that's low as well, maybe even a bit lower, that'll do. And what we're going to do, we're going to just put some shadows behind our statues. Okay, I'm going to put them on the wall and on the ground, because we're inside the tomb at the moment. So inside the tomb should be fairly dark, except for the area where you can actually see the path leading out. So this wall here behind the statue should be dark. The floor in front of the statue should be dark. We're going to create another layer, and I'm going to name this layer light. It's for the sunlight, and basically, although one side of the statue is going to have light coming through, the other side is going to be a bit dark. So let's just grab a white brush and just make the middle part as light as we can. Keep the opacity down, don't make it too dark. Just fix that up with an eraser there. So the middle part should be very light and the outer area should be dark. That's what we're trying to get at the moment. So I'll make it as light as we can without ruining the image. I might drop the opacity down a bit more. And that's pretty good for now. Okay, we're going to just move the roof up a little bit. And we're going to move it fairly close to the edge. And let's go down to our wall and let's duplicate our wall. Right click, duplicate, and call it something like wall extended. We're just going to make our wall a bit higher. Just use the moving tool and move that up. Put the wall extended layer underneath our wall and just match up the bricks, make sure they look good. Match it up as well as you can. I think the roof was a bit just too close to our statues, so we need to just extend that wall a little bit. That looks good there. I'm just going to adjust my mask a little bit, so you might need to do that as well. Just adjusting the mask a little bit, and all you got to do is click on the right side of the sunrise layer where the mask is. Get your brushes out, soft brushes, and just tweak it a little bit. Make sure it's a soft brush. If you're happy with yours, leave it as it is. I'm just tweaking mine to make the opening above the staircase a little bit bigger, that's all. Okay, let's go right to the top of our layers and let's get the paintbrush out. And what we're going to do is create another new layer. Let's name this layer and we'll call it shadows and light. And first of all, we're going to apply some shadows on. So let's make sure the opacity is down. Let's make sure it's a soft brush, and it's quite big. Now on the right side of the statue, it's going to be dark. On the left side, it's going to be light. So let's get that going, because the left side of the statue is facing the light that's coming through the tomb wall there. The right side is obviously in the darkness, and that's good there. You could even apply the light and darkness on the layer itself, but I would just create a new layer and apply it there, because you can always erase it afterwards if you make a mistake. So same thing on the left statue, left side of it darker than the right side. Right side, add some nice light shading there. Just darken these areas up a little bit. We are going to darken the whole surrounding area soon, but just focus on the statues for now. Get that half cast look. We can do the roof. The floors as well. The front of the statues. Just keep darkening areas that you feel need to be a little bit darker. You feel that there's too much light. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger and do the roof a little bit more here. Now if you make a mistake, remember Control Alt Z. I think you can go back up to about 20 moves. So let's just darken this. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this darker shadows. Now I've created a new layer so that we can separate it from the old one, just in case we make a mistake. I'm going to really darken the outer areas of our Photoshop file. So really get in there and get that as dark as you can. The roof, around the statues. Okay, the darker the better. Remember, you're inside a tomb. There is nothing but natural light there. Okay, I'm going to create another new layer, and this time I'm going to name this one Egyptian Glow. I'm just going to name this Egyptian Glow, and what we're going to do, we're going to use the paint bucket. Now I'm going to select a color like an orange, and one of these ones here, somewhere up there, that'll do. Like a brownish orange. I'm going to use the paint bucket to just drop that color into this layer. Now there's something called blend modes, and what we can do is change the blend mode to overlay, which will put it on top and blend it into the layers below it. We'll also adjust the opacity down, and what you're going to do is get that really Egyptian orange pyramids type feel to it, and it's starting to get there. Drop the opacity down to 40-50%, and that's looking okay. If your one needs more transparency, then just change your opacity. Keep it on overlay, but just change the opacity. Okay, it's starting to look good. Let's create a new layer, and let's call this Glow. And I'm going to get the brush tool, and with the same color I'm just going to paint over a few areas. The first area is the statues, so paint over both statues, and yes, it does look really weird at the moment, and that's because we haven't used a blend mode yet. It's just on normal. Also do the staircase and the floor. Really want to get that looking good. You can also do the sky if you like. The inner walls of the tomb, maybe a little bit up top. Okay, let's change that to overlay, and also drop the opacity down because it's a bit strong at the moment. A little bit more. Okay. You adjust it until you feel you are happy with it. We're going to create another new layer. And we're going to name this layer Sun Rays. Now, we want to get the sun in there. Before we get the sun in there, actually, let's choose a white color, a small brush, and we're going to just draw on some sunlight that's shining into the cave. So just draw some lines. That'll do. Keep the opacity low, not too low. Make sure you can see it because we're going to change the blend mode of the layer. What you might want to do is change the size of your brush and just have some different lines coming in. Now it does look weird at first, but then what we're going to do is we're going to change the blend mode and opacity down, and it's going to really look nice. So before we do that, actually, let's go to blur. It's in filter and then blur, and we want a Gaussian blur, and just drop the radius down to about 9, 10, or yeah, something like that. That looks pretty good. You decide what you want the blur to be and hit OK on that. And there it is. It's looking very good at the moment. We won't change the blend mode, but we will drop the opacity down a little bit. It's up to you if you want to do that. We're going to create another new layer. We're going to call this the sun, and we're going to move this layer underneath our staircase. So let's just drag that layer down. Drag it down beneath our stairs and stairs shadows as well. Okay, so it should be in between the sunrise and our stairs. We're going to pick a different color. It's going to be the color of the sun. So an orangey yellow sun is what we're looking for. So pick that color. Okay, a color like that will do. Now, what we're going to do is just adjust the brush, make it big, but also make it soft. And a little bit bigger. And then we're just going to pop it in there. Now, because the staircase is in front of it, we won't see the whole sun. We'll just see a little bit. You can adjust the opacity to make it brighter if you like. And now I'm just going to adjust the size, make it smaller, but make it harder. And could even change the color of, yeah, just make it, that's a good size there, I think. Yeah, smaller and harder. And we'll change the color to a lighter color. And if we just go in the middle there, you'll see it's starting to look like a nice sun there. A little bit softer actually, that's a bit too hard. And maybe a lighter color than that. Something like that will do. Let's check that out. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, I'm just fiddling around with the sun a little bit just to make it look a little bit different here. But when you're happy with it, that's fine. Play around with the colors, decide what colors you want your sun to be. Go straight to the top layer here, create a new layer, make sure it's sitting on top of all the other layers. And this layer is going to be called Final Shadows. And what we're going to do is get a black brush, make sure the opacity is down, make it big and soft, and just touch up our shadows bigger than that, softer, and especially the outside, the surrounding. Okay, just the outside, but don't forget the inside of the statue should be a little bit dark, but not as dark as the outside. That's it. So the middle should be very light compared to the outside. It shouldn't be completely dark, but it should be hard to see detail. We're going to create another layer, and this one we're going to call it Final Glow. And we're going to get the paint bucket tool, and we'll choose another color this time, and we'll choose that orangey Egyptian yellow color, and we'll make it overlay and drop the opacity down a little bit, and there it is. It's looking fantastic. Dropped it down pretty low there. Now what we're going to do is actually select all our layers except the background layer, and we're going to right click, and we are going to merge our layers together into one layer. Now only do this when you are completely happy with the final product. We're now going to go to Filter, Render, and render a lens flare. Now there are different lens flares. I'm going to go through them all right now. You position where you want your lens flare to be, and we want it to be where the sun is. And I'm just going to drop the brightness down. You can play around with the brightness and just see what kind of effect you have. I'll drop it down to about 20 or 30% and hit OK. And that is what lens flare does. It's kind of like a flare from the sun that comes in to that layer. I'll show you what the other ones do. So there is a that one actually looks really good. I like that one. And the last one here, or second last one I should say, is that one. That looks pretty good too. So you can check out all of the lens flares. Now when you're happy with the one you want and you've applied it to your layer, last thing you want to do before saving is maybe just put your name. So I'm just get the T, which is a text box, and draw it on. Change the size of my text box, change the color as well. I'm just going to pick white, and I'll put my surname in there. Pick a font type. That looks pretty cool. I'll hit the moving tool and just move it in the bottom right corner, and I'm ready to save. File, save as. Now if you're going to continue to edit, you'll save it as a Photoshop file. If you've finished and you want to publish your image, I would select PNG. There's also JPEG, but PNG is high quality images. Give it a name, hit save, and we're done. Let's have a look at the final product, what we created today. A long tutorial, but worth it. Fantastic Egyptian tomb. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys next time.